Hey, Sid, it's so great to have you on Go to Market Mavericks. Thanks for joining us. I think one thing that we really wanted to have you on for is your eclectic background, especially in like many different go-to-market seats, everything from demand gen at CA Technologies to AWS to ops at HubSpot, and then now at Databricks. So I think given that background and where you're at now, I think that would be a good starting point to like what led up to here and give us kind of like a taste of your origin story and career journey.
Sure. No, great to be here. Thanks for having me on. I'll give you a little bit of the Tour de France and how I got here. Started out my career really on the finance side, investment banking, private equity, and I realized pretty early on that what I wanted to do was really be part of a technology company and be more on the operating side. So I really started I would call it operating career at CA Technologies, which was, formerly Computer Associates. Now it's part of Broadcom. And I went there thinking I was going to spend, maybe 2 years max. Ended up turning out to be 13, a little longer than I expected. But it was still one of the like very, I would say, formative aspects of my career, and a lot of the foundational skills and perspectives I have in the roles I've been doing over the past decade or so really built on things I did there. And specifically was this pivot from finance and operations into go to market during the back half of my time there.
Yeah.
I'm happy to dive
Yeah,
into.
on the finance side, actually, is that something? Because I've always partnered closely with the finance team, especially with like a demand gen role, which I know you're at CA Technologies, and I feel like that is probably a good foundation to understand like, oh, here's how the finance team thinks and like how I can hold myself accountable and keep our team efficient and all that kind of stuff. I would love to get like a sense of how that in finance background informed the go to market side of things you're doing.
Yeah, it's a great question. It started with finance, but where I think it parlayed into what I got asked to do was go build out a digital sales organization. Demand gen was a big component of it,
Mm.
but really it was the challenge the company was facing was we were heavy enterprise sales for a majority of the 35, 40 year history, selling to Fortune 2000 companies, and we wanted to go down market into go after the commercial space. Was we had done a slew of acquisitions, and we're getting to try and buy and SaaS capabilities that were really becoming part of the portfolio in a much more organic and inorganic way.
Mhm.
And we need a distribution mechanism that was going to be cost effective, scalable, and be able to effectively engage with buyers the way they wanted to be engaged with these new types of solutions. And it was not, I did not expect to get the call to go build this out. And I think the logic around choosing somebody with a finance and operations background is because sales and go to market is so data driven
Mhm. Mhm.
and so operational in nature, that if you take that lens to it, especially when you're building a high velocity, high throughput type of organization, it is very financially driven. You're thinking about conversion rates. You're thinking about what does productivity look like at a rep level, and how does that ladder up to the results of the entire company and what you're trying to do. And I think I just brought a different perspective to it. Now, I didn't have the field experience that a lot of the sellers on the team did, but that's where it's about complementing yourself and bringing on talented and seasoned leaders who have done that, and how do you bring best of both worlds together.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. And then kind of walk us through from that point to, getting into ops and like the rest of your journey through HubSpot and other places, AWS. And I'm trying to get all this leading up to where you're at now. So maybe walk us through like how you change from that to into the ops role.
Yeah, well, I realized after that, 3.5, 4 years of building out the digital sales and demand gen function, I said, I really like go to market. And I loved the fact that go to market could bring together every element of what I had done before it, the finance, the operations, the strategy, but really in a context that was close to the revenue and economic engine of the company.
Hmm.
So I said, I want to stay very close to it. But what I thought about when I was making the move to AWS was I realized I really liked thinking about architecting the go to
Mm.
market model, building the operating system for go to market, thinking about the KPIs, thinking about how do you create a scalable engine. And I thought about it and I said, what roles would give me that opportunity? And it became, at that time it was still heavily called sales ops, was pre rev ops being a real thing. And that's where I made the pivot to go to market ops, or rev ops as we call it today.
Hmm. Hmm. And at that time, was it? I feel like RevOps and go to market strategy are, or RevOps is sometimes viewed as, hey, like build this tool, connect the dots, connect the systems, which is like you kind of mentioned is architecture, but it's more like tech architecture versus like architecting the engine that drives revenue for the company. And so I wonder if I guess I'm wondering if you started off there and then from getting that point of view, you kind of like moved into the strategy side, or do you always come at it with a strategy lens? And how can folks in the role kind of like get themselves a seat at the table? Because I know you're there now.
It's a great question. I think when I say architecture, I think of it as revenue architecture,
Hmm. Hmm.
and really think about how do you architect the go-to-market engine. There's certainly a systems and automation component to that, but I think the fact that I'd had to carry a bag and be on the quota carrying side as a sales leader,
Hmm.
almost by accident, gave me just I think an amount of empathy and perspective on what it takes to see all of this land. And
Yeah.
I had always taken the perspective when I joined AWS. I said, my job is to be a strategic business partner, the go to market COO of the business or any business that I work with. And that brings with it, the strategy. It brings together the operational excellence, the analytics, the insights. All those are important components of it. But I didn't grow up in sales ops or in rev ops. I kind of got there in a different way. But I think a lot of the perspectives along the way shaped how I approach it, at least.
Yeah, I can imagine that the empathy of like you've been there, done that, you've been in the shoes of reps, really goes a long way. I know on the marketing end, like we're passing over leads to that group, and if you don't have
Yeah.
that understanding, it's like, hey, work these leads, and people are just like, you don't know how bad these are, and so if like you're
Yeah.
not sitting in the seat and doing it, then it's hard to like yeah, you can do spreadsheet math, but when it actually comes to practice, like the math doesn't typically work out unless you have that true empathy built in. I feel like.
Yeah. And I think having, being able to understand the marketing perspective, the sales perspective, if there's CS, really seeing what are the different languages everyone's speaking and how do you harmonize that and say, hey, this is just really part of go to market,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
how do
of
we
course, of course.
understand the interfaces.
One thing that comes to mind is, I know you're not doing all this alone, and you're probably reporting to different people, but then also have your own team. And at the companies you've been at, what kind of structure have you seen work well in terms of reporting structure and like how you would build out your team? If you could get into that, I think it'd be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, my perspective on it, and it's been pretty consistent, is having go to market operations strategy and operations or rev ops be as close to the business as possible.
Mhm.
And I think reporting structure is one thing, but I think you need to really view yourself as two in a box and really understand what are the challenges, the pain points of the business, and operate as if you're fundamentally part of the go to market organization. And in the examples in the companies I've been at, including here, have been part of the go to market organization, and very closely aligned, which forces that natural synergy. But um, it's easier when the reporting line is structured that way. But I would encourage people to think about it either way.
Yeah. When you say close to the the business, or is that like, if you can maybe connect that to a company level priority and
Yeah.
OKR or something? Does that mean you just like you have a revenue target as well, or maybe you could kind of share
Yeah.
like what that looks like in practice?
No, that's a great question. I've always thought about like the company's financial objectives, growth objectives as what I measure myself on and the team on.
Hmm.
And then there's a set of OKRs on what are we specifically doing, because we're not quota carrying. What are the things that we are specifically doing as a team to
Hmm.
go enable and drive those outcomes?
Hmm.
So I think it's two sides of the story. I think you have to have the outcomes, and then what are you doing, and then how are we driving the accountability across the go-to-market strategy or RevOps org to go deliver that.
Yeah, yeah, and I feel like a lot of times people think of uh, in the ops role as being somewhat like a service org. Like, hey, your stuff's gonna come your way, and like you're gonna have to be reactive to that, and it's hard to plan OKRs and things like that. But also, I think it's moving more towards the direction of we're gonna be proactive and we're gonna be strategic and we're actually gonna like really align to these business metrics. So I'm curious, like how you cohort out that time and give yourself like the flexibility to like take what's coming at you, but then also be proactive and like make sure you're having like like an impact on the
Yeah.
business.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly, if you understand what the go-to-market objectives are, how do they ladder up to the company's objectives, and there's crystal clarity around what you're there to do. I think it really helps you allocate the time and the resources, the bandwidth for the team, the go-to-market strategy and operations team. Say, are we directly in support of the things that are going to move the needle? We can't do it all. And we can't do, and we certainly can't do all of it well. It's really choosing what are the, 3 to 5, big rocks that are directly aligned to where the company's trying to go, that are going to help not just this year or next year, but thinking about it from a longer term perspective. Are you building for scale? Are you building for repeatability? Are you building for consistency? And making sure you really carve out the time for that. And then being realistic about, there is a run the business, and how do you run the business more efficiently and effectively every year.
Hmm.
You can identify what those areas are. They're probably not a complete surprise. You look at your tickets and see where tickets are coming in, and look at patterns, and now with AI, you can do that in an instant. Go analyze where your troubled hotspots are, and then decide which ones are worth tackling and which ones are not.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's put
And
a
I
pin on
think,
the AI thing. I definitely want to get back to that and how it's servicing you and your org. Uh, but I do want to like fast forward a little bit to now where you're at. I know you've been talking about like kind of your experience at Databricks also, but you're head of go-to-market strategy and planning at Databricks. I think I got that right.
yeah.
And I know that role, go-to-market strategy, I was one that I've seen come up a lot more. And I'm curious, like how you define it, and maybe how it's different than what you were doing in the past.
Yeah. So I lead go-to-market strategy, planning, and compensation. So those are the three teams that are really part of my purview here. I think of it as really taking the long-term view for the company. What is the company trying to do in the medium to long term, and how do we work backwards from that,
Hmm.
and think about the resources, the bets, the plays, etc., that are going to help us understand what the market opportunity is out there, and how do we connect what we're doing on the ground today to that market opportunity.
Hmm.
So I really think of it as a uh, strategy is about choice, right? And
Hmm.
strategy is about resource allocation. Where are you going to go place your bets to go after the market in the most optimal way possible? And so that's the strategy component, is really taking a multi-year view around where's the market going, and where are we going to play in that market to go after it.
Okay, so you're continuing on. There's strategic bets, but then there's also planning and compensation on the
Yeah,
planning side of things.
yeah.
Or what are the other two things
Yes,
encompassing?
if you take go-to-market strategy as taking the multi-year view, then year one of that multi-year plan needs to be what you're going to go execute, right? And how do you think about the resource allocation? How do you think about territory design, quotas, compensation to go align with that strategy? I think a lot of times I've seen strategy mean something very, um, very long term, too long term, or too intangible in some ways.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think having to uh, think about the planning and execution, and then ultimately how are you going to incent and reward the right behavior to drive the
Yeah,
right outcomes, kind of forces that natural tension of making sure you're staying grounded with the strategy and is it really executable.
I see.
And I think this you're seeing, I think, a lot more of these, I think, go to market strategy type functions, because I think the velocity of the market has really, just accelerated to the point where you really need to stay, um, you know, 5 steps ahead of where the market's going,
Hmm.
and maintain a sense of agility and a sense of always thinking about what's going to be next or seeing around corners in a way that I think we've never had to before
Hmm.
with the acceleration of the trends that are out there right now.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious, like how you, because it does sound like you have, like, not only is it strategy, it's like, hey, this is what we should be doing, but then also you have the, kind of the mechanisms to like make it happen on the
Yeah.
compensation side, which is all the incentives. And so, how critical is that part of it? I feel like there's probably a lot of people who are like, oh, I'm a strategist. I'm suggesting all the strategy, but then I don't have any power to like change to actually make that strategy come to life. And so, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that and how those two things play together.
Extremely closely, and I they're very interlinked, and I don't even think about it as linear. I think about it as a closed loop.
Hmm.
Really is. It's like, if you think about, here's the strategy, here's the operating plan related to that strategy in the first year of that strategy, and then how are you going to, once you understand what your resource allocation looks like, the roles, what engagements need to happen across the customer journey, how are you going to make sure you're incenting those behaviors and outcomes so it's the right thing for the company, the customers, and you're getting the incentives right to
Hmm.
keep your reps motivated.
Yeah.
So it's really important. And then I would say throughout the year, it's continually learning from the planning and the compensation side, what's working well, where are there opportunities to keep up leveling and improving execution. What have we learned that can further inform the strategy as we continue to evolve that? So I think
Yeah, I
we're
was gonna ask about that, like how you go back and in retro and look at how things are performing and
yeah.
changing incentive structures potentially. I know that there's like that can cause a lot of thrash, especially for the thing. Speaking of empathy for the reps, if you're changing that a lot. So like, what's your cadence for reviewing and changing things?
Yeah, you have to be thoughtful. I think that we're, we are a very data driven organization, and we want to make sure that we have enough data and
Hmm.
enough time to get that data that's high fidelity to be able to go back and look at. All right, this is something we introduced at this point in time. Uh, Here is what we intended. Let's go
Hmm.
look at that relative to what we intended, and look at, is it driving the right outcome. I think in enterprise,
Hmm.
you're probably talking about 6 month increments.
Yeah, even
And
then, that's pretty fast for enterprise. I feel like, yeah.
it's fast, and I think some of it could be, it could be adjustments or tweaks, not necessarily whole scale changes. Like, I think you have to weigh what's the disruption something can create
Hmm.
relative to what's the potential impact of doing it now versus waiting another 6 months for the following fiscal year.
Hmm.
I think it's a balance.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And another thing I didn't really get to, but I know, this, it's a new world and things are a lot different, and you have a different role, different title.
Yeah.
And I wonder what if you could share like the difference between like jumping from where you were before in ops and like how you view go to market strategy is different, because I think a lot of people kind of interchangeably use it, but use the
Yeah.
terms, but they're not the same thing. So that would be helpful, I think, for the listeners to
Yeah.
understand like how you view it.
Yeah, I think there's no clear nomenclature everywhere. I would say, 3 different companies. At AWS, it was called, I was running field sales operations.
Hmm.
Uh, at HubSpot, I was leading the RevOps organization, but we also called it go-to-market strategy and operations. here it's go-to-market strategy and planning. There's the operations side of it, which sometimes can be part of the uh, overall organization. So at HubSpot and at AWS, we combined a lot of the planning, strategy, and operations elements.
Hmm.
And here we I have a colleague of mine that I work with very closely who leads a lot of the sales strategy and operations, like with our business partners and sales leaders around the world. And it allows us to stay focused on both the execution and on the strategy, but make sure that um, we're staying in lockstep
Hmm.
on the strategy and the planning. Um, but even when I look at HubSpot, it was RevOps, but it was strategy and operations. AWS, strategy and operations. So I don't think you can get away from strategy if you're going to be in one of these roles and you want a seat at the table. You have to have a heavy element of go-to-market strategy, seeing around corners, where's the business going, and being a real business partner. It goes back to your point earlier on proactivity
Hmm.
and helping drive the business as opposed to being driven by the business.
Yeah, for those of for those people who are in that kind of role right now, but maybe they feel like they're underwater or like can't get their head above, to be have a seat at the table. Do you have any advice or recommendations for like how to do that or how to get a seat at the table?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first one starts with, like, deep prioritization and focus. I think
Hmm.
trying to do it all is generally a recipe
Yeah.
for failure. And I think that's where it's linking back to what are the most important things for the business and trying to do a handful of things that directly align to those business outcomes and doing them really well. But the key is getting alignment with your stakeholders that those are the things you're going to prioritize.
Hmm.
And therefore, these are the other balls you're going to drop. I think that's really important.
Yeah, yeah,
And
100%.
then I think the other side of it is looking at where is the uh, maybe less differentiated work or things that just need to happen to keep the business running efficiently. How do you get more efficient with those, and where can you leverage automation? And now, where can you reimagine some of these workflows through AI?
Mhm. As a
And I think it's going to be really important to do that.
Yeah, a perfect segue into the other topic I wanted to get into is we chatted before, but I think for the sales org or for marketing, there's a lot of AI tools and a lot of like AI market out there. And maybe it's just because you that's what you see. It's kind of like public facing. It's you get these like more tangible results or customer success is a good example where agents are actually like going out there and doing that work.
Yeah.
And so I know that there's got to be some AI wins for go to market strategy and ops type of roles, but they're maybe like more behind the scenes. So yeah, and then you also work at Databricks, which is an AI company. So it's like you got to be using AI in some way to make your life easier and more productive and more efficient and all those things. So if you could tell the listeners here like what is it you're doing with that and maybe some opportunities for new tools and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it starts with, like, what is the work, right? What is
Hmm.
the work of RevOps? And if I think about a strategic RevOps or go-to-market strategy and operations leader, I think about three things. I think about how are you being a strategic business partner and helping the business see around corners? Number one. Number two, how are you driving a level of productivity and effectiveness for your field? And then three is the operational excellence. How are you continuing to drive efficiency and make things better and smoother from just an overall operations standpoint? And I think inherent in the uh, in all of these is uh, increasing the decision velocity, and that means getting from data and analytics right to insight.
Hmm.
And we are a data and AI company, and a big piece of this is how can we leverage data to get these insights out faster through natural language querying, for example, through we have a solution called AI BI
Hmm.
with Genie that allows us a natural language query data to understand what are patterns and trends that we're seeing. And so a lot of times, a lot of work and time goes into answering the ad hoc questions and
Yep.
not having a scalable, systematic way of being able to do the ad hoc work that isn't in a dashboard right away. And I think these are ways of increasing the velocity of getting from data to insight and then being able to act on it.
Hmm.
Um, I think there's other areas like, when you look at areas of the business like a deal desk, or you look at areas like a ticket queue from the field, really understanding where are these requests coming from, what are the categories of these requests, how can you leverage an LLM, how can you leverage a chatbot to look at 80% of the questions that are the same
Hmm.
and answer them and tie back to your rules of engagement or your uh your compensation policies, and then you're handling the edge cases with the team, right? And I mean the list goes on and on. I think deep research for areas that are uh very highly focused on the strategy component, or automated QBR decks. I mean there's so many different
Yeah.
use cases when but I think you have to parse out what is the work and where is it going, where do you have an opportunity to redirect that to higher value added work.
Yeah, I'd imagine there's data in lots of different systems and tools, and like the like one data silo or data source somewhere impacts something in a different thing, like your deal desks from what's in your CRM, from what's in a help desk center or whatever. So, um, I feel like how do you get that data foundation for for AI to come in and say like, oh, this here is actually impacting something over here. Have you got to that level of inference yet, or is that kind of like the dream? I feel like that would be very helpful for your role.
Yeah, I mean that is what Databricks really thinks about, is how do you create a platform for data, whether it's structured or unstructured. And the concept is a lake house.
Yeah, yeah,
And the lake house is the best of a data warehouse and a data lake really all in one. And this becomes effectively the platform that your AI can run on top of, and you can do, you build AI apps on top of that, agents, etc.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's exactly how
Eh,
we think about it.
Yeah, AI doing that work, what is like the doing the jobs for you? I wonder if you could, and if you don't need to get, if you can't get into specifics, no big deal. But what if you could share like one of the jobs that it's that you're exploring, or that's working for you right now? That would be a tangible example would be helpful, I think.
Yeah, I think, like, giving you the example earlier of compensation. I own compensation. There are lots of it's a topic that's always of interest to the field, and you tend to get lots of questions, and some of them could point to the
Mm.
fact that we could have been clearer in our policy, or we didn't communicate something as clearly as we thought we did. And you get a lot of these signals from the field through the form of tickets or
Hmm.
slacks or other or emails, and you start to step back and say, all right, what are we learning from the feedback? So I think it's a great way to get feedback at scale and really make some sense out of it to then go drive action.
Hmm.
And then you can go one of two ways. One is, or both is, you understand where you need to be clearer in your communication and tighten things up as one part of the root cause. And then the other is, we're still going to always get a set of questions that are
Hmm.
for new folks joining, or policy maybe have changed. How can you leverage AI and an automation capability to be a one-stop shop,
Yeah.
but without involving
That's
folks?
where my mind immediately went, is like, oh, you're getting all these questions. Can someone just like type in, a natural language query and then the AI answers it? It sounds like that's the case, and that's what's happening already for you.
Those are the types of things you can quickly experiment with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, for anyone who wants to follow you, or any plugs that you want to provide, it was really great chatting with you, and want to make sure to give you an opportunity to get anything out there that you wanted to get out there, and really appreciate the time, Sid.
Yeah, no, it's been a fun conversation. I would just say to experiment, and I would go back to a word I said before, or a concept of this: reimagine your workflows. think about what work you are doing today, and where is there an opportunity to rethink it. And if you rethink it, what time does that give you back? What efficiency does that create? And then where can you redirect that time and energy into being more of that strategic COO of go to market, and get yourself a seat at the table if you're not already there. And I think that's an important point to underscore, because I hear exactly what you said earlier. Everyone's drowning with less resources, expected to do more, and maybe that's not going to change for the foreseeable future. So then you have to say, if that's a fixed constant is the amount of resourcing you have, well, how do you work smarter and work more effectively, and in the process upskill yourself and make yourself more valuable in the organization that you're already in. So that's what I would
Awesome.
leave
That's a great
you
place
with.
to end. Thanks so much,
Yeah.
Sid.
Thank you.